When a police officer looks at you during a traffic stop and says, "You have nothing to hide, right?" Almost every driver feels the same thing at the same moment: pressure. The question is not really a question, it is a frame, it is a setup. It is designed to put you in a position where saying yes means opening your car to a search, and saying anything else makes you sound like someone with something to hide. Most drivers cave right there. They say, "Of course not, go ahead," because they genuinely have nothing to hide and they believe that cooperating will prove it and end the stop faster. Here is what almost nobody knows. The moment you say, "Go ahead," you have waived one of the most powerful constitutional protections you have. You have given the officer written permission, in the legal sense, to search everything you own. And whatever they find, whether it is something innocent, something you forgot was there, or something that can be taken out of context, you consented to the search that found it. You cannot challenge it later. You handed it over voluntarily. And you did it because a question was phrased in a way that made saying no feel like an admission of guilt. Today I am going to show you exactly what is happening when an officer says those words, why that specific phrasing is one of the most effective psychological techniques used at the roadside, and the one word you say instantly the moment you hear it. One word that shuts down the technique, protects your Fourth Amendment rights completely, and cannot be used against you in any court in this country. Hit subscribe right now, because this channel exists to give you the knowledge that protects you before you need it. Share this with one person before this video ends. Someone who would hear those words and say, "Of course not, go ahead," because nobody ever told them they had a different option. Here is the reality that most people are never taught. The Fourth Amendment protects you from unreasonable searches and seizures. It does not protect only people who have something to hide. It does not activate only when you are guilty of something. It protects every person in this country, regardless of innocence, regardless of what is or is not in their vehicle, and regardless of how cooperative they want to appear during a traffic stop. The right to refuse a search is not the right of criminals. It is the right of every American, and exercising it is not evidence of guilt. It cannot legally be treated as evidence of guilt. The Supreme Court has addressed this directly. In Schneckloth versus Bustamante from 1973, the court held that consent to search must be voluntary, free from coercion, explicit, and informed. You have always had the right to say no. The problem is that almost no one tells you that, and the way officers phrase search requests is specifically designed to make you forget it in the moment. In Florida versus Bostick from 1991, the court confirmed that a person must feel free to decline an officer's requests or otherwise terminate the encounter. Refusal to consent to a search cannot automatically be used as the basis for a search. Saying no is protected conduct. In plain English, you are allowed to say no. You have always been allowed to say no. And no cannot be the only reason they search you anyway. Now here's the specific psychology behind the nothing to hide framing, because understanding why it works is what makes you immune to it. The question is constructed to do one thing. It reframes your constitutional right as a matter of personal guilt. Instead of asking, "Do you consent to a search?" which is the actual legal question, the officer asks whether you have something to hide. The shift is subtle, and it is devastating to most people's decision-making in that moment, because now the question is not about your rights, it is about your character. Saying no feels like saying yes, I am hiding something. Saying yes feels like proving you are honest and cooperative. The entire frame is designed to make the legally correct answer no feel like the morally suspicious answer. This is not an accident. Officers are trained in conversational techniques that encourage voluntary cooperation. The nothing to hide frame is one of the most effective of those techniques because it works on honest people. People who genuinely have nothing to hide are the most vulnerable to it because they believe that consenting will demonstrate their innocence and end the encounter faster. But here is what that belief misses. Your innocence is not what is at stake when you consent to a search. Your constitutional rights are. And your rights do not exist to protect guilty people from consequences. They exist to protect all people from unreasonable government intrusion, including honest people who forgot about the prescription bottle under the seat, or the pocket knife in the center console, or the paraphernalia a friend left behind 3 weeks ago that they never noticed. Innocent people get charged from consensual searches every single day, not because they were hiding anything intentionally, because they waived the protection that would have kept that search from happening at all. Here's what the bad way looks like. Officer wraps up the traffic stop, hands back the documents, and then leans slightly toward the window and says, "You have nothing to hide, right?" Driver says, "Of course not." Officer says, "Mind if I take a quick look then?" Driver says, "Sure, go ahead." Because the sequence of questions has made refusal feel impossible without looking guilty. The search takes 12 minutes. The officer finds an old prescription bottle without a label, a pocket knife the driver forgot was in the center console, and a small amount of residue in an area of the car the driver did not even know existed. None of it was intentionally hidden. All of it is now evidence from a search the driver consented to. The driver cannot challenge it. They said, "Go ahead." Here is what the good way looks like. Officer says, "You have nothing to hide, right?" Driver says one word, instantly, "No." Then immediately follows with, "I do not consent to any searches." That is the complete response. No elaboration, no explanation, no apology, no, "I just feel like my privacy," or "I know this sounds weird, but..." Just those 2 sentences delivered calmly and clearly. "No, I do not consent to any searches." The word "no" in this context does not mean, "Yes, I have something to hide." It means, "No, I do not consent." It answers the implied question, "Will you let me search?" rather than the framed question, "Do you have something to hide?" You are not engaging with the frame. You are answering the legal question underneath it. After those 2 sentences, silence. You look at the officer calmly, and you wait. If the officer rephrases the question, "Come on, if you have got nothing to hide, this will only take a second," you say the same thing again. "I do not consent to any searches." Then silence again. You are not arguing. You are not escalating. You are stating your legal position clearly and then not moving from it. Drop a comment right now and tell me, have you ever heard those words during a traffic stop and said, "Go ahead," because refusing felt like admitting guilt? Yes or no? I want to know how many people have been caught in that frame without ever realizing what was happening. If you are still here, hit the like button right now, because the next section is the piece most people do not know. What happens legally after you say no, and why that answer actually protects you more than yes ever could. Here is what happens after you say no, and "I do not consent to any searches." The officer has 3 options. The first is they let the stop conclude and you drive away. This happens more often than most people expect. Without consent and without independent probable cause, many stops simply end because there is no legal basis to continue them. The second option is the officer claims to have independent probable cause to search, something they observed, something they smelled, something they say gave them an articulable reason to believe a crime was occurring. If this happens, they may conduct the search over your stated objection. You do not physically resist. You do not touch the officer or interfere with the search. You say clearly and at a volume that will be captured on body cam, "I do not consent to this search. I am invoking my Fourth Amendment rights." Then you say nothing else. That statement on the body cam is your attorney's foundation. If the probable cause claim is thin or pretextual, your non-consent on the record is the starting point for a motion to suppress. Evidence found during a search that followed a clearly stated non-consent, absent genuine probable cause, may be suppressed, meaning it cannot be used against you in court. The third option is the officer calls for a canine unit. Here, the Rodriguez versus United States ruling from 2015 is critical. The Supreme Court held that officers cannot extend a traffic stop beyond the time necessary to complete its original purpose without independent, reasonable suspicion of criminal activity. If the purpose of your stop was a speeding ticket and that ticket has been issued, holding you for the arrival of a drug dog without additional justification violates your Fourth Amendment rights. You handle this by asking, am I being detained? And if so, what is the basis for my continued detention? That question forces the officer to justify holding you past the completion of the stop's original purpose. If they cannot, every minute you are held past that question is legally questionable. All of this flows from the two sentences you said when the nothing to hide question landed. No, I do not consent to any searches. Let me tell you about Patricia. Patricia is 52 years old, lives in Ohio, and was stopped for a broken taillight on her way home from visiting her daughter. The officer issued a fix-it notice, handed back her documents, and then said, "You have got nothing to hide, right? Mind if I take a quick look?" Patricia had nothing to hide. She had never been in legal trouble in her life. She said, "Of course, go ahead," because she thought cooperating would prove she was honest and the officer would let her go. The officer searched the vehicle and found, in the trunk, a small glass pipe that belonged to Patricia's adult son. He had used her car 2 weeks earlier and left it there. Patricia did not know it existed. She was detained for over an hour. A citation was issued. She faced a legal process that took 8 months, cost several $1,000s in attorney's fees, and left a mark on her record that required additional legal action to address. Her attorney's first question was, "Did you consent to the search?" "Yes." "Did you know you could say no?" Patricia said it never occurred to her. She had nothing to hide. Her attorney told her what I am telling you now. The protection the Fourth Amendment offers has nothing to do with whether you have something to hide. It exists precisely for the moments when something unexpected turns up during a search you never should have allowed. Patricia's innocence did not protect her. Exercising her right to refuse would have. Patricia now knows the two sentences. After this video, so do you. There are 3 legal cases every driver should know before they ever hear those words again. The first is Schneckloth versus Bustamante from 1973. The Supreme Court established that consent to search must be voluntary. You have the right to refuse. Ignorance of that right does not invalidate a consent you gave, which is exactly why knowing it matters before the question is asked. The second is Florida versus Bostic from 1991. The court confirmed that a person must feel free to decline an officer's requests. Refusal to consent is protected conduct and cannot by itself provide the basis for a search. The third is Rodriguez versus United States from 2015. The court ruled that a traffic stop cannot be extended beyond its original purpose without independent, reasonable suspicion. If you have stated non-consent and the stop has concluded its original purpose, continued detention to secure a search requires independent legal justification, not just the hope that you will eventually change your answer. When you know these 3 cases, you understand that the nothing to hide question has no legal teeth. It is a social technique applied in a legal context where your rights are clear and your answer is protected. Here is the complete recap of everything you now know. The nothing to hide question is a psychological frame designed to make your constitutional right to refuse a search feel like an admission of guilt. It has no legal basis. Your answer to it carries no legal obligation. The one word you say instantly is no, followed immediately by, "I do not consent to any searches." Those 2 sentences are your complete response. No elaboration, no explanation, no apology. After you say them, you say nothing else. If the question is rephrased, you repeat the same 2 sentences and return to silence. You do not engage with the frame. You answer the legal question underneath it. If the officer claims probable cause and proceeds with a search, you state clearly on camera, "I do not consent to this search. I am invoking my Fourth Amendment rights." You do not physically resist. You document everything immediately after the encounter. Think about one person in your life right now, someone honest, someone cooperative, someone who would hear those words and say, "Of course not. Go ahead," because they genuinely have nothing to hide, and they believe that showing it will end the stop faster. That person is the most vulnerable to this technique. Share this video with them today, not later, right now before you close this tab. What you just learned is the exact thing that could keep an innocent person's cooperation from becoming the evidence used against them. Next week, I am breaking down what happens when an officer says the words, "I am going to need you to step out of the vehicle," what that request means legally, what it does not mean, what you are required to do and what you are not, and the exact words that protect you from the moment your feet hit the pavement. Subscribe so you catch it the day it drops. Hit the like button if those two sentences just changed how you will handle the next time an officer tries to reframe your rights as a question about your character. Drop a comment right now telling me whether you knew before today that no is a complete legal answer to that question. I read every single comment. I want to see how many people this lands on for the first time. Know your rights, use them, stay safe.